Welcome back to the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is Nalina Murthy, the founder of HealthTech Trailblazers. As a syndicate lead and angel investor, she focuses on women's health, longevity, caregiving, and health tech infrastructure, a sector she believes is long overdue for bold innovation. Her path to investing is grounded in deep operator experience. As a former engineering and product leader for global Fortune 500 companies, she brings rare technical depth and operator instincts to early stage investing and also serves as a mentor and longtime startup advisor. Nalina, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ashley, thank you. Thank you so much for having me in the show. Excited to be speaking with you.
Likewise, I'd love to have you start off by sharing more with our listeners more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm a former operator, like you rightly mentioned, an engineering lead and a product lead. I was in the B2B consulting space for a long time, like writing code to build fault-tolerant systems, building products to scale billion-dollar infrastructures, to building data products that guide product roadmaps, etc. Um, I was having fun building all these things, doing all technically challenging work. And to add to that, I also, used to be a workplace equity champion, leading women CRG, helping women break into uh, tech and product, especially after a career gap. So that also comes from my own experience when I took a break, maternity break, and getting back to work was not as common as it is now, or was not that well supported. So that kind of, the combination of multiple things that I was doing, super happy there, until few things, a combination of certain things kind of started me, like made me think what direction I want to go, in this next phase of my career. um, like if I had to list down what were those combination of things, it was, one is pandemic for sure.
Mhm.
uh, as much as I love doing technically challenging work, I started kind of thinking of, okay, how do I leverage my tech and product background, to build something more fulfilling, more mission driven kind of products. My own experience navigating the healthcare system, the inequities, along with that, of course, the great unleashing of chat GPTs and etc. made me look hard into, okay, what I want to be doing next. So I pivoted into the startup space, later part of 2023, advising women founders. So continue to do that and collaborated with the startup to again help underrepresented, folks break into tech and product. And that's when I kind of started kind of noticing the gaps that I noticed. Um, Women's health funding gap, women founders having difficulty raising funds, etc. So that was a pivotal point where I moved to where I am right now.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I really admire that you said that you took your personal experiences and used that to think about what was next for you in your career. And so now that you focus on in this stage being a syndicate lead and angel investor, what was that moment that made you realize that investing was really the next best step for you?
Again, things happened very organically for me, and
Mhm.
and it was not just one particular kind of data point that led me to this. So I would say I took some time. Obviously, there was that, having worked in corporate for a while, there was the burnout and everything with all the other factors that I already mentioned. So I was like just exploring to figure out, um, where I want to be. For example, I was divided between health tech space and ed tech space, as I saw these two were, two of the most prominent sectors that were impacted during pandemic. So kind of, you know, picking between those two. So things were like as if things were getting aligned. I was meeting more and more people in the health tech women's health space. So that factor combined by me being workplace equity champion, and then realizing whatever I was going through, and also the anecdotal experiences I had heard from friends and family, it felt more and more like women were going through similar experiences but in isolation.
Hmm.
And that one, and then you realize, okay, we want to build something to fix the problem, but you also know that the capital allocation is not actually flowing in where it needs to flow. um, Women form half the population on this earth. 80% of the healthcare decisions are made by women. We are going to be $1 trillion industry by the turn of the decade. So it's not just about solving for women, but it also makes business sense to invest in, women's health. So in the since 2023, for about a year to, I mean, yeah, a little over a year, this is what I was like building my own thesis. And that's when I realized, okay, I love doing both, being an operator to an extent, like kind of staying closer to the founders, as well as also finding those founders who are actually innovating and building solutions in the space to back them. So that's how I happened to pick this intersection of, health tech and investment. So
Hmm.
these things kind of helped me come up with my own thesis for what looks like for the next decade.
Yeah, and do you mind sharing your thesis? Would love to hear it.
Sure. So, like I said, because I love to stay closer to what the founders are building, so that kind of, I was naturally drawn to very early stage, startups. So I invest in pre-seed, seed stage startups, and US based companies, which are, even though I would say it's broadly health tech,
Hmm.
but with key focus areas being women's health, caregiving, longevity, and anything that improves the efficiency in the healthcare system. So that is basically healthcare, data infrastructure, AI, of course, but how is it contributing to the bottom line, etc. So that's at a very high level what I look at, when I'm looking for talking to founders.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you have both the operator experience and now being an investor because it's like you have both insights from both ends of the spectrum that it seems like they probably both flow so perfectly to one another and you're able to use like your operator experience when you're investing and your investing experience when you're an operator or a startup advisor.
I think you're right, and that's the beauty of it. I find so
Hmm.
many women actually leaning into this. Um, well, I don't come from a traditional finance background. So when I got into angel investing or becoming an LP with fund, and then I moved on to being a venture fellow with Hustle Fund last year as well. So after reviewing those deals, so you tend to kind of see yourself, what your, not just your thesis is, you identify what is your own kind of advantage, your vantage point. It could come from your operator experience, it could come from your lived experience,
Hmm.
whether through you or people closer to you, etc. So I've seen more and more women do that, whether they are engineers, product leaders, marketeers, kind of use that, and or vice versa, people who are on the other side of the table, they're check writers, and now they are leaning in hard to help the founders build. So I think that's something I'm noticing, and I'm glad I kind of lean into the space in a similar way that you mentioned.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd love to hear what you've learned by getting into investing. If there's a piece of advice that you could pass on to someone who is also considering becoming an investor, just what you've learned throughout your own journey that you think would be beneficial for others to hear.
That's like a lot, and again, I would say um, it you need to see this both from a subjective and objective lens.
Hmm.
So when I say subjectively, for me, I would say if someone already knows what is the sector they want to build their thesis in, that is wonderful. But again, if someone is very new on this path, they know that whether they want to build or not, but they feel like I want to back certain founders, not necessarily in a particular sector. So kind of being very intentional about what are the kind of founders or the startups they're building. So they're able to kind of coherently tie all these things together to say, hey, these are the kind of startups that kind of excite me.
Hmm.
You get to know what your personal investment thesis is. So if you already have it, great. If you don't have, just pay attention to what are the kind of startups that are drawing your attention. So I would say starting with that clarity would be one of the things. Again, after that, I would say finding the right founders. And what do I mean by that? The ones who actually have lived experience, like I said, whether they directly or um, through their family and friends. Like I said, especially this is again very subjective because I come from a health tech space, so it not necessarily translates to other sectors. So for me, that was something, founders who are passionate about this, plus also have that business sense. So that mattered. I think the other one more important thing which I've heard from so many people within my network, and I'm grateful for their advice, which I feel is like invest in your relationships before you invest in the startups.
Hmm.
So that is something I think I cannot stress that enough. There are so many things, whether how you look at a particular sector or look at certain, unit economics or, current landscape that you learn when you have that network you can tap into. Um, More than what we, kind of learn from a book or a podcast or etc. So leaning into your network, building those relationships, I think that goes a long way. So anyone, so thesis, relationships, founders, and um, again, what else would I, kind of suggest? Again, I said, what's your unfair advantage? This ties back to your thesis.
Hmm.
So maybe somebody has worked is extensively on sales side of things, for example, so they know where the gaps are, where there is still innovation waiting to happen. So probably they see a startup who is addressing what they've seen for over 2 decades and nothing has been done. So that's your unfair advantage, it's, and this is going to kind of scale and take off. So tie it to the thesis and see where you have that that vantage point, that what you see that nobody else is able to kind of for the most part see. And so just keep an eye out for those things. And I think those are the points I'll say. But when it comes to women's health in particular, I just have to add one more thing as well. It's very easy to get carried away with your passion for the mission. Everyone wants to contribute in every way, but I would say it might be a little counterintuitive, but also impact investing also actually requires some rigorous business discipline as well.
Hmm.
So don't let the passion alone cloud your judgment. If the business doesn't exist, then the mission will not exist. So kind of prioritize both. They are not against each other, they go hand in hand. So I would say these are the things I would like say if anyone is looking to invest broadly health, like a little narrow focused on women's health. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. It's such great advice. Especially, I feel like a big theme with this podcast is always like community and relationship building. So I always get so excited when our guests mention that because I think that's such a huge part in tech is just regardless of whether you're a founder, investor, community builder, or consultant, relationships really can move the needle so much. So I love that you highlighted that as someone looking to get into investing.
Totally. And especially, we are living in this virtual Zoom world. It gets very easy for us to just sucked into that, online meetings and etc. But again, I see that as both a, from a pros and cons perspective. uh,
Hmm.
People are more open to jumping on a Zoom call now versus when you're dependent only on in-person meetings. But there is already also the fact that you are already so familiar with so many people over a period of time. You've collaborated with them that when you meet them in person, you don't even realize you're meeting them for the first time. So
Yeah.
that's the level of kind of trust you build, whether in person or online. So that community part, totally agree with you.
Absolutely. And of course, your focus is on health tech and women's health. And so, say that there's a founder, early stage founder in the health tech or women's health stage listening to this podcast who is interested in seeking investors. As an investor yourself, what's something that you look for before making an investment? If there's a few things that you like to check out for, anything like that that really stands out to you from a startup?
um I would say one of the first things I look for is this a real problem, right? And
Mhm.
especially in women's health space, what do I mean by that? Is it like a real research or a market gap? And I don't mean market gap in a traditional sense, but it's like a genuine data gap. We all know that's like our number one priority in women's health space. Getting that diverse data set is something, it's a gold mine.
Mhm.
So for me, I would look at that, is there that genuine data gap, and is that space really ignored, underfunded, or dismissed, for example? I think that's the first thing I will look into. And the second one, I think I like I mentioned previously, it's also about the founder fit, right?
Mhm.
So to kind of see if they really understand the problem well. And what do I mean by that? It's not like, do they understand it intellectually, but it's like they need to understand it viscerally to make an impact here. So whatever their experiences, because if they feel it that way, then they're going to stay here when it gets hard, and it always gets hard. So to be able to see that sort of commitment from the founder, so I would
Mhm.
say finding that right founder fit. What is the other thing I'm going to look at? And third one, I might say, it's just the scale of the problem in itself. Is it a symptom, or is it going to change the system? For example, I'm looking for a solution that helps millions of women, and is changing the baseline for them versus solving it for hundreds of women or thousands, for example. So what I look for is like a systemic impact, which will create ripple effects across the sector, and force a rethink of sorts, not providing a workaround solution to something that we are already used to seeing.
Mhm.
So I'd say third one is scale and impact. And what else would I see? Scale, impact. Oh, and I would say again, the viability of the business itself. So is
Mhm.
there a clear path to reimbursement, profitability? Um, I just have to say, if the solution cannot survive in the real world, then it cannot make a change in the real world.
Yeah.
So impact without sustainability ends up being like a good intention.
Mhm.
So I need to see that the founder has really thought this through really hard on how our current healthcare system works and how their solution fits into this entire system, right from navigating the regulatory landscape to reimbursement cycles, to the path to scale. So when all these, like the 4 points, whether it is real problem, real founders, systemic potential, and viable business, when all they tend to be true, that's when I get super excited. And when one of them is missing or needs a deep dive, then I'll go back to the table to have a conversation with them before we write the check.
Hmm. Definitely. And since you're so involved and integrated within the women's health and health tech space, what are some trends that you're seeing happening throughout this year, if you're noticing anything big that's been really prevalent right now.
Um, women's health space. One is, I will say, people are now getting used to saying women's health is not niche. The market has arrived. So
Hmm.
if I were to put it, I would say maybe like couple years back, we were in the um, toddler stage, and right now we are at the tween teen stage from a general, VC landscape perspective and the startup maturity perspective. Whether it is MIDI and other, Maven and other startups there which are leading the pack, they're really opening up various avenues. Um, with regard to trends, I would say that there's one white space which I'm particularly watching closely and more excited to see who are going to be the early players in the space. So that's like for me the autoimmune sector.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I published a study on this. I'll be more than happy to share that link with you if anyone is interested to read up more on that. So in the US alone, there are around 50 million people who suffer with autoimmune diseases, your MS, rheumatoid arthritis, and or lupus, etc. 80% of those people are women. So that is huge. That is huge.
Hmm.
And it, it, to quote the exact number, I think we lose $180 billion in a year from a healthcare system perspective treating these. I would say that is one of the biggest white space I'm watching. And especially this is a great time to be kind of innovating and funding that space because of various factors. Our diagnostic pricing has come down by 96%. The biologics expenses are now untenable for the payers. The employers who actually pay for these costs, they are waiting for innovative solutions to start backing. And and our GLPs have created a great commercial template, which could be kind of reused to say how this can be scaled.
Hmm.
So whatever funding in the autoimmune space till now, majority of that has gone into the pharma side of things. So between the diagnostic, it takes on an average 4.5 to 5 years for a person to actually figure out what works for them or what has happened. So that in between gap, the entire patient journey, diagnosis and care and everything. So anyone building in this space with these four factors, which are acting as tailwinds, I'm really closely watching who's building. I know Well Theory is already there; they are building on something like this, but we need to see more breakout startups in that area.
Yeah, and so interesting, and also such a great point how you're mentioning that to identify these big gaps where there's big opportunities, and for aspiring health tech or women's health founders to notice and address those gaps as well, because that's really where the opportunity lies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One question I have for you, I think, because it's great to hear about advice you'd give for what works as an investor, but what's something you found out that didn't work or something that you wish you did differently throughout your time?
Yes. So this is where I tied back to the rigor part. So that was something I learned the hard way. As with any other investors who are new on this journey, I was so passionate about investing women founders and women self founders that I have made a couple of mistakes along the way investing in companies which have great mission and but I think where we could have done better was stress test their business model and see whether it
Hmm.
is really actually VC backable. Um, and what does it mean? So is the time right,
Hmm.
etc., multiple factors. So that is where my own kind of diligence evolved, I would say, to make sure that impact and rigor should go hand in hand.
Hmm.
So that is one of the things I learned the hard way.
Yeah. And of course, it's like those things that you wish you did differently. It's like hindsight is always 2020. So what you go through and things that you wish you could change, it just sets you up for the next best thing and kind of something that you remember as you take that next step. Whatever your career might be in tech is just it's always the mistakes that we learn from. And I feel this way that I feel like there's no such thing as failure. There's only such thing as learning. So being able to like do something and learn from it and move forward and continue growing as you can.
I love that you said that, Ashley. Totally, absolutely. You know, it's a lesson, it's a learning at the end of the day. So,
Hmm.
and I know even from the founder's perspective, we have seen multiple founders who, their first startup failed and they've gone on to build some, immensely successful breakout startups. So I feel it's a learning for both, not just the investors but also the founders. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And what is next for you with Health Tech Trailblazers? If there's anything you're working on that you are able to share or things you feel excited about, would love to hear where you're taking your own company.
Health Tech Trailblazers will be focusing on, at least for the rest of the year, building, backing founders who are building in those core sectors that I have spoken about. And kind of satisfies the criteria, the most part of it that I mentioned as part of my thesis. So that's something that I'll continue to do. You will see me writing more about what I've been observing in the space over the last 1 year. So that's something that was put on the back burner, but you will see more and more how the space and health tech trailblazers aligns with how the space, the evolution of the space. And apart from that, just again, like I said, building relationships. So if any of your audience who's listening there want to hear more about what's happening in this space, or even want to just catch up, just meet wonderful people out there and share, exchange ideas.
Love that. And that's the perfect segue into my next question is going back to this theme of community and relationship building. I always love to have our guests give a shout out to someone in tech that they're really feeling inspired by lately. So could be a founder you've met, a fellow investor, community builder, consultant. Would love to hear who you're admiring recently.
Fellow investor, community builder. I would say there is this investor called Lauren Taylor. She's building out her own fund again in the health tech space, but with a different thesis. I mean, it's so broad, as you know.
Mhm.
I mean, I admire the hustle. I admire her pace, and at the same time, the way she shows up authentically, and she's forever giving. She is this space is industry is so opaque, and not much available online for especially women investors looking into two things, but she's one among those who's always there to kind of not just it's like I want to do something here, but I also want to build that community. She's a very community oriented person, so I think
Yeah,
that's why I get attracted to each other. So yes, she is one of them.
love that. That's a great shout out. Nalina, this has been such a good episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show to share everything that you've been doing behind Health Tech Trailblazers. And I'd love to have you share with their listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Nalina Murthy, and on my website, you can go ahead, take a look more on my thesis, what we are building, healthtechtrailblazers.com. And if not, just reach out to you and you will be able to find them.
100%. Thank you so much again for coming on today's episode. It was so great.
Thank you so much for having me here, Ashley. I so enjoyed this conversation. And best of luck to you with your podcast. You're doing amazing work here.